everybody. My name is Alyssa Shotwell, and I'm the online editor of The Signal. And today, on this behind the scenes look at some of the goings on at The Signal, I have two other editors here today.
I'm Troylon Griffin II. I am the managing editor of content and operation.
Hello, I am Stephanie Perez. I am the managing editor of Outreach.
This podcast has been created by the editorial board at The Signal for a few reasons. So we wanted to increase transparency and how we work at the Signal. So this is like the insight of the decision making processes that we go through, as well as for you, our audience, to know um, what we do other than write. Because when people think of a newspaper, they're like, oh, they got their little notebooks and they're scribbling, even though we mostly type at this point. And there's so many other things that go into bringing each issue to you and each um, thing that you see on social media. And even then, there's a lot. Um, so this episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking about our Black History Month campaign, and our moderator, even though she's going to be answering some of the questions, is going to be Stephanie. So take it away, Steph.
Yes, we are going to be answering some questions, and we actually have them, and we're just going to talk about our process for the campaign. This campaign did take about a month to plan. So, first question: how did you go about choosing topics? What were some other ways you considered portraying the campaign?
In terms of how we went about choosing the topics, deciding how to represent topics that we wanted to explore, it all started where we, obviously first got together as a group and we thought, okay, what are some very prominent issues, related to Black America and Black culture that should be talked about during Black History Month? And I would say it was also like a challenging aspect, but in a good way, not like a bad way. Instead of us doing what has become somewhat of a cliche during Black History Month, which is just highlighting people, specifically people from the civil rights movement. Instead, we highlighted actual issues, talking about their past, their present, and maybe even the future. And so it definitely made things a lot more interesting to think about. It gave us like, this opportunity to really think outside the box instead of just, thinking, all right, on this day we'll do MLK, on this day we'll do Rosa Parks, do these campaigns. A big part of it is social media. And so if we decided something was going to not be on social media, then it would instead maybe be expanded upon in an actual article, like our list of books that we did by Black authors.
To kind of continue what Troylin was saying, um, that is something that not only we have fallen into, but have seen um, it become kind of like where everybody highlights a person. And while that's good, it's still good to be cognizant of how that can be a little bit problematic because you're putting, like, say if we highlight a tennis star, we're putting everything, we'll just say Serena and Venus Williams. We're supposed to say, like, oh, they represent black tennis, which is arguably they do, but in other things like activism, how are you going to put, like, oh, that's all you need to know is that one person? And so being able to talk about an entire topic and then provide resources to find out more information later, then you can learn about a lot of people. And we're not trying to figure out who are the, 28, or if we only count weekdays, 20 people that like have to be it. Like there's, between celebrity culture and stan culture, like we should be thinking more about issues possibly instead of individuals. Like we all live in these different systems. So highlighting those things out were a little bit more important. I think originally we were gonna do like a certain day was gonna be highlighting a person, but there was just so many ideas that came from our discussions that that was gonna be a fallback, and we had so many good ones that we just end up not highlighting anybody. And this is not to throw shade at people who do that. We did that for 2 years, and we'll probably do it in the future. But it's just a way of thinking outside, as Troy said, outside the box. When it comes to choosing the topics, what we did and what we've been doing for a few different cultural months, like Hispanic Heritage Month and Women's History Month and other ones, is to kind of create a frame for like each day of the week. So Mondays, we do this Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or slash the weekend. So this campaign we had Fact Monday, so it was truths and myths about Black history, Black culture, Black issues. And then Tuesdays, we had kind of like mini explainers. So, what is an issue? What's the history of it? What's being done right now? And who's putting in that work to address it? Wednesdays, we had notable impacts. So, this is things like Stephanie wrote our one about black trends on social media and about African American vernacular English and Black American Sign Language and those contributions. Thursdays we had UHCL themed things, and then Fridays were the more fun comic books and stuff like that. So it was creating that structure.
Yeah. Like another thing to add about like how we chose topics is I mean for me, like when I thought about topics, I like looked into what I guess is more relevant toward like the UHCL community and just things that I guess people do cover, but it's not um I guess as like in depth. Like it's things that you kind of just touch the surface of it, but there's so much more that goes into them. And I thought it'd be like a good idea to kind of like in terms of like the I guess the BASL and the ABE post, it's just something that I thought it'd be more interesting to go in depth into.
Yeah, it's language. It's something we use every day, but we don't think about. Something I want to add before you start with the next question was that one of the things that we set like parameters, like what do we want to do and not want to do during this campaign, is we stayed away from the civil rights because that's kind of like where in our history classes Black history is talked about, it's like slavery, civil rights. When number one, the civil rights movement of the 60s was the second major wave, so it overlooks the contributions, like what was put in place by the activists and leaders before the 60s, like in the 20s and 30s, and even before that. And also because if you can name people from Black history, we already know you know Rosa Parks, MLK, Malcolm X, and a few others. And then same thing, um, a few names from the time period before and during the Civil War. So even the issues that we talked about, yeah, they could be linked to civil rights and linked to, they're all, I think, to a degree linked to the transatlantic slave trade. But beyond that, like Black people are not just the suffering and the struggle; it's the celebration and the creativity. Like Steph's post about AAV and BASL. I can't say that fast.
So, what was the most challenging aspect and what was the most fun aspect when planning the campaign?
Well, I think, at least as a writer and creative person in general, the planning stage is always like kind of the most fun part. It's still fun once you actually make the decision and you start doing those things, but I think that the planning process really can be the most fun part. But in terms of what was most fun about the planning process, I would say it was meeting and discussing like all the different ideas that we had, which were really good. So just that whole idea of having to, really think, okay, this is something that should be highlighted and we should do it this way rather than just, highlighting a certain person from the civil rights era. That made things quite fun and challenging, but challenging in a good way.
Um, so for my end, I agree that the most fun part was planning. When all the ideas are coming and somebody will say something like, "Oh, that'll work," or "Oh, that one won't," but let's use it like this. Let's like tweak it a little bit to make it more doable within the framework that we came up with for the different days, the different themes, depending on the day of the week that I explained earlier. Um, One of the most challenging parts, which I feel like we didn't quite get there. Like we did I feel like this was the best campaign. However, I still was like, where are the gaps in just like when we're doing our story ideas for our actual issues and not just social media, where is the gaps in our coverage? And so even though we did talk about BASL, in retrospect, I kind of wish we did more about Black disability, which they're touched on like that concept is touched on in different ways, but I'm sorry, I'm kind of bleeding into another question. That was the hardest part was making sure that we're including all the different ways of black expression and black issues. So it's just a lot. This is why it's not supposed to be a month. It's supposed to be all year. And so trying to fit all that concisely, but we're still leaving ourselves open to not even just leaving ourselves open, still committing to covering these kind of stories year round. It was kind of hard to that selecting process, like, and then actually following through because we did a lot of the planning before school started. So when it came to actually doing each day, it got kind of hectic, and the process that we have is like a little, what is it called? Like a factory line. So if one part gets behind, you're like, oh, let me catch up for the next person. If you ever watch I Love Lucy, or what is Charlie Chaplin, he has something on one of his movies like that. It got a little hectic when school started actually producing the content and doing the research, going through edits, on top of everything else that we do at the Signal, which will be a different podcast.
I agree. The challenging part, I guess, I also think is not having like enough time, I guess, since it's only what 28 days and there's just so much that could be used.
Yeah.
So I think that was very challenging figuring out what we could use. Um, and I guess the most fun for me was like seeing it come to life, just putting the facts and then Alyssa's what are they, graphics,
Hmm.
like I thought that was so fun, seeing all of that and how she went about to doing all of that, um, especially some of them they they're all really good, but some of them just like I guess have like their own little personality. I thought that was really nice.
It was definitely refreshing to just not have to write one and just be like, someone has given me all these ingredients. Let's make a cake.
Okay, what do you want people to take away from this campaign? What is the importance of the campaign?
The main thing I wanted people to take away is that, you know, these issues related to Black culture are very much still important. I wrote my first semester of college an opinion piece on kind of like the relevance of Black History Month, um, because I it was like a sequel to something I wrote in high school about whether there will ever be a day when we don't need a Black History Month. And what I wrote in college was, if people still feel that Black issues are underrepresented, not talked about enough, and things like that, then there's very much still a necessity for Black History Month. Black culture is very relevant and has very much made major impacts to society. And these things need to be known and always will need to be known.
I agree 100%. There's no buts. I know solely there's a but there's not. Um, that's something as well. Like honestly, that's why I sign up for all of these sort of campaigns that have to do with like Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, Women's History Month, etc. Is because I'm talking about the U.S., but honestly, this applies to most places because of colonization and stuff. Every part of um, our culture, every part of our technology history, education history, science, everything, art has been touched by people that don't always get the recognition, whether they're people of color, whether they're queer, whether they're disabled, whatever their gender is. And these months, I mean, we do talk about the bad stuff too, bad as in like the way people continue to be marginalized. But the thing, while I think that those are really important, I really enjoy and really hope people take the the good away from it too, um, and and continue to discover those people in their own fields and their own career paths and majors. So we do have a significant HSH slant in our bias just because of who makes up the staff. How and even that did show in the history month. And I want to shout out artists all day long, but I really hope people take what they learn and apply it to their own life. So, if you're studying to be a nurse, if you're studying to be a lawyer, if you're studying to be an educator, like all of these stories and these histories apply to you and the way your career was constructed, even if you feel like it doesn't. So I encourage you to seek out these people, seek out these contributions, not just in the past, but who is speaking in the contemporary, who are the professionals in your field, from marginalized groups or identities, and especially when they intersect.
Yeah, I agree to both of your points. And I think also, um, so I find like that the importance of the campaign is also to kind of acknowledge the contributions the Black community and Black people have done, um, and not just for the United States, but also for the world.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah.
This is a podcast, but I've been nodding the whole time for both of you.
um, so, what is something in the campaign that didn't quite work or fit, but that you think people should know about?
Okay, so there were some things that I had that we had discussed in the early stages of the campaign meeting. Um, topics that I had like pitched kind of relating to like black philosophy and things like that. It's just there were many other things we'd also come up with that we ultimately decided, those were things that were definitely needed to be put out because of how relevant they were to what is going on in today's society. So there were things I had such as, the concept of like black nihilism, and me being someone who has an interest in martial arts. I had suggested that we do like something about, the uh connection or relationship between like martial arts and the black community, especially in the 20th century and even now. But those are things that of course can be done at another time. Uh,
I have a jumping off
yeah.
point for yours, which was the martial arts thing. So one of the days that didn't end up working, and it was on me. I'm gonna say it, it's my day. Was we had a day that we were gonna dedicate to. It was actually a Friday to Black and Asian culture and anime. So I'm just gonna stick to the martial arts example. So when you don't see yourself on the screen, you, say you're like a black child and you see somebody that's not white, all the media is white dominated, and you see martial arts films, or you see a novella or something that is um, just an outside perspective, outside of what's considered the mainstream, a lot of children and adults will associate with that. Um, and so that's why we have what weren't able to include was the relationship between the black community and the Asian community in terms of culture. So what things, and it was mostly going to focus on the positive stuff because there's some negative stuff, obviously, but these are things like the love for anime that we've seen, and that has become more mainstream for black um, creatives to talk about. Example, Meg Thee Stallion's Paper Magazine shoot in 2018 or 2019. Before that, it even goes back to what Troylon was saying, which was martial arts, and that was really big in black exploitation films of the 70s and the 80s. I think the first female leading lady that was like I don't want to say like a fighter, like she was an action star. The first action star was a black woman, and she did, I don't know if she did martial arts, but it was definitely influenced by that. And we also have even,
Pam Grier?
is that her name? I want to Google during a podcast, but I'll
Possibly.
do it. Picture. Yes.
It could be Pam Grier.
Yeah. That's exactly Foxy Brown. Uh-huh. Um, so
Yes.
there's also like I mentioned Meg Thee Stallion, but she's more contemporary. But there's also like the Wu-Tang Clan has talked about how their love for martial arts came from they, I don't think they went to school. I think they either skipped school or it was a snow day because it's up north. And the only thing that was showing is they would go to like an Asian theater and they watch these movies and were just like fell in love with it. Um, so that was supposed to be a day we didn't get to. And that was like that's something that was I guess technically didn't make the campaign, so I wanted people to know about it. Um, and then the other thing, it didn't make the campaign for a separate reason, which was I found out about it after we had already figured out everything we were doing. I had an interview with Dr. Ann Gessler of the first year seminar program for an explainer on racism in textbooks. And she told me about this thing called freedom schools. This is the first time Steph and Troylet are hearing about it too. So in the 60s and 70s, the nonviolent coordinating committee, student nonviolent coordinating committee, which was one of the things John Lewis was famous for, um, had these summer camps for I think 2 or 3 years, and they would take poor children and black children, and usually it was both in the South, but they would also take poor white children as well. Um, and it was a school to like help with like remedial math and some of the core subjects, but they would also teach things like black music, history of certain African countries. They would teach you ways to protest non-violently because it takes a lot of discipline when someone is yelling at you and spitting at you and being violent towards you, and people to take the self-discipline to not react. And they would also teach them debate tactics as well and civic stuff. And I found out about that. I'm like, it's too late. We already have everything planned. Freedom Schools, look up stuff about it. It didn't make the campaign that I feel like more people should know about.
Discussing books to highlight and everything for Black History Month. There was one book I wanted to put on there, but the only reason I didn't is because I hadn't read it. And it felt weird if I just was like, we should just do this book because I like this person, even though I haven't actually started the book yet. And it was Mariah Carey's memoir that she had released like in September. I think it was September, October. Um, and I was like, well, I can't suggest that book just
Truly,
because
we
I'm a
didn't
big
read
Mariah
all the
Carey
books.
fan. What did you say?
We didn't read all the books.
Oh, I thought any of those books that we had suggested, I thought they had to be books that we'd read.
No, because
Like,
we included ones we didn't. And so this is another thing about behind the scenes. Now, if it's a blog, yeah, read them. But for this sort of listicle, it's like you just have to do research about it. So make sure, like, it didn't have a defamation case and like a lot of things weren't true or something like that. But you didn't have to read all the books.
see, whenever we were each suggesting our books, I'd assume they were like each books that we had read, if we had suggested them. Like whenever I suggest like the Malcolm X book, for example, was something I had read. So I guess that's why I had made that wrongful assumption. Um,
I
but
think I
hey,
read
that's one book that I thought about.
well, so what was say the book again? The Mariah Carey book?
Uh, the meaning of Mariah Carey, her memoir that had come out, which I did finally start reading. Coincidentally, I think in February or maybe it was January. I still have not finished it yet because I am a college student who has a lot of other things I also have to read for school. but so far it seems very good, and really highlighting the kind of things that she had to you know deal with, um and all growing up, like especially as somebody with like mixed heritage and everything. So it's quite good, very poetically written.
Um, even though we didn't have to, I think I read like six of them, six or seven of them. I'd hope that we all read at least one, but if not, that's fine. It's not like we had 6 months to plan this and you had time to read a book just for this.
Yeah.
I guess I'll talk about mine. Um, I was kind of really looking forward to the was it anime or animation one?
Yes.
Um, yeah, but I didn't want to mention it because for some reason I don't know. I was like, maybe we did do it, but yeah. Now that you mentioned it, um, yeah, that was like something that I was also very like excited for. Um, wait, what is the question? I don't even know if I'm answering right.
What didn't work or fit, but you think people should know about?
Okay. Um, yeah, so that one. I mean, I just feel like there's so many things that didn't fit, but again, it goes back to just we have 28 days. Like we can't fit everything. Um, like Alyssa said, we would need the whole year, which America, come on. Um, but yeah, I don't know what else to say because I felt like there's just so much that we did cover, but there's so much more that we can cover. So for next time, I guess.
um, was there anything? So to include more, was there anything in when you were researching, say like your BASL one or your fashion one or any of the other ones you wrote? Was there anything that you were like, oh, that's gonna be like a whole paragraph. I can't include that.
Um, yeah, especially for like fashion, like especially fashion right now is very influenced by Black culture. I mean, just in general, it's always been, but right now it's very like streetwear is very, I guess, popular.
Mhm. Even when we're
So
at home.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, like the fashion one was extremely, I guess, heavy in all of that.
Yeah, when I got your text for it, I was like, she had a hard time narrowing it down. And
Yeah.
looking up pictures to do the graphic for it, I saw stuff and I was like, "Oh yeah, there's that, there's that, there's that." I'm like, "I know Stephanie saw all of this," and like she's like trying to focus.
Yeah. Especially whenever like I think I just mentioned like a little bit about how like oversized clothing was like indicative of like clothes being passed down. Like that within itself is another thing. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, because it comes like a class thing too.
Yeah.
So yeah, this
I will
month was
say, I
fun.
think oh, I was gonna say also, like, I think with some of my topics, it was definitely a case where it was like, oh my, there's a lot there's a lot to go into with this. Like, I feel like the only one that of like the ones that I did, the only one that was like really more so cut and dry was the one about like black people in Congress, and
Yeah,
the history of that. Like, it was like, okay, that's just numbers, and seeing how they rose. But other ones, it was like, wow, this could very much be a whole textbook and everything.
hmm To kind of wrap it up, we hope that you enjoyed our not just the podcast, but also the Black History Month stuff. We really, really encourage you not only to look at them, but also to the last slide that has more resources because it's like this last question. There's so much stuff that we could not include even when we picked the topic. So those read more, have nuances that we try to capture in there, but they go in more detail. Um, and there's books, there's movies. I don't know if there's that many podcasts, but there's some TV shows and articles and academic journals and probably another medium I'm forgetting. Oh, videos on YouTube. So I really encourage you to go learn more, and that would be a great place to start. And it's a really diverse list of resources, because we know like not everybody's gonna want to read an article, especially when they just read all of social media. So go watch a movie, go listen to a podcast about these topics, about the hard ones that are hard to listen to, as well as the celebratory ones that get you excited about a topic. So yeah, we hope that you enjoyed the campaign, and if you're interested in contributing to these, you could always email us at uhclthesignal.edu, because we'd love to have more people on staff. And if you're inspired by any of these topics, you could either write or do something visual or possibly work on a future campaign. Um, because it was really fun.